and welcome to our third of our 4 studies on the Advent season that we're offering here at St. Paul's United Church of Christ in German Township. I'm Pastor Terry Farmer, and we're delighted that you're joining us for this study. And as I said, this is the third study in a series of 4, and if you've just joined us, don't despair. All of the studies, all 4 of them, are already available on our YouTube channel or also on our church's website. You can find them all there so you can catch up or see them in any order you want. But we will be sending a link out to one a week during the Advent season along in our worship video, which may be how you got this, and you can click on it there. But however you want to view these, we are so glad that you're taking the time to do it, and we hope that these studies enhance your understanding of this season. So today we're going to talk about the political situation in Judea during the time that Jesus was born. Now this may seem boring. I try not to make it that way, but it's important for us to understand what is going on in order to more fully understand the biblical story that is being recorded for us in particularly the book of Matthew, but also in Luke as well. And those are the primary sources that we have for details about Jesus' birth. There is a cosmic version of what's going on there in the first chapter of John. Beautiful prose. I certainly recommend it to you, but the details are limited primarily to Matthew and to Luke. Well, in order to understand what's going on, we have to understand the Herods, or the Herodian dynasty in Judea. And Herod the Great is the first Herod that we encounter here in the New Testament story of Jesus. He is not the Herod that takes part in Jesus' trial before his crucifixion. That is a son of his, Herod Antipas. We're talking about Herod the Great now, and he is the one that's alive at the time that Jesus is born. And Herod the Great was not really a very bad ruler over this part of the world. He owed his allegiance to his close connection with Rome, as did almost everyone around the Mediterranean in those days. If they were going to be in power, either semi-independently or otherwise, they were going to have to kiss the ring, as it were, of the Roman king or Caesar. And he managed to hold on to a favor after Caesar. Caesar was murdered. You remember your Shakespeare in the play Julius Caesar, Et tu, Brute. But after he is murdered, he still stays in favor with the next group of folks that are in power, and is able to win for himself a position as a co-regent of this area. He outlives his co-regent and ultimately winds up being the ruler of Judea under the permission, if you will, of the Romans. So he's as long as he keeps the Romans happy, it looks like they'll leave him alone to do what he wants to in that area. But when they're not happy, he could be out brutally in very short order. The Romans liked their peace out in the provinces and did not take very kindly to anything that disrupted that. And if a ruler couldn't keep the peace, they were not going to last very long. Well, Herod has a number of years where he consolidates his authority, gets through some bumps in the road over whether he's going to, how much authority he's going to have, and then he actually has a fairly prosperous reign. He is building public works, he is taking care of the people, but in his personal life, he's kind of a mess. And we know that he had at least 5 wives, and he had children by many of these wives, and many of them were sons. And it doesn't take a lot of soap opera watching to know that when you have that many ex-spouses or current spouses, as the case may be, because they were able to be polygamist, you're going to have different wives having different ambitions for their children as opposed to the children of other wives. This disorder spilled over into all the things that Herod had to do toward the end of his reign. In fact, he strangles one of his wives. He murders 2 of his sons who he thought were becoming a little too aggressive about succeeding him in power, as in they might kill him. And well, he got to be pretty bloodthirsty. In fact, when he was dying, his will provided that a bunch of his upper-level officials were to be murdered once he died because he wanted to make sure everybody mourned where the whole country was in mourning when he passed, and that was his idea of how to do that. Now, we are told by historians that instead of killing these officials, they were pardoned, and instead of being widespread mourning, there was probably widespread celebrating when Herod the Great died. But Herod the Great is the nemesis in and is the background in these stories that we have of Jesus' birth. And in particular, he figures very highly in Matthew's story. Matthew's story, as you'll recall, is the story of the wise men. They are Zoroastrians, we think, coming from either Iraq or Iran, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that Zoroastrianism is a religion that still exists in that part of the country to this day. They were not kings, they were wise men. They were probably astrologers, because astronomy really had not come into its own. And so the fact that the stars and the heavens could foretell what was going to happen was what passed for science in that day. It will evolve later into something that we would view as being more scientific. But they are out to figure out what is going on with this star that they've seen. You know the story. And they wind up going to Herod because they want to know where this king that the star is portending where he's going to be born. Now, when Herod hears this, well, let me read it from Matthew's. When the king Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all of the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired to them where the Messiah, or Christ, was to be born. So he really is interested in figuring out where this baby is located. And you might think that it was because Herod was a devout Jew, which he probably really wasn't very, and would want to know because of its religious significance. But if you understand Herod's background, where everybody in his family is trying to bump him off so that they can take over and be the next king, you can understand the paranoia. And you can also understand the paranoia of the people in Jerusalem, because they are worried about what Herod might do, because this guy flies into murderous rages. He's unpredictable. He is, well, not a very nice guy. And so the fear, I think, is not because of the baby coming as much as it was, what is Herod going to do in light of this? So Herod wants to find out where the baby is going to be born. And we find out later in the story it's because he wants to kill him, to make sure that he is not a rival for the throne. And that's where we get the slaughter of the innocents, which is also in Matthew's gospel, which is the basis for the Coventry Carol that is sometimes sung at Christmas, which is a part of a passion play, or mystery play rather, that was extant in England. It would travel around, and this is the only piece of that whole play that we have left, but it is the song from the slaughter of the innocents that the Coventry Carol is written about. So, as we understand Herod wanting to hurt this child, and we understand Herod seeking the child even after he gets away, and being a threat to the child, we know why Joseph and Mary flee to Egypt. When they come back, Herod's not there anymore, but his brother another member of the family wants to kill the child, so he winds up going up to Nazareth and bypassing Jerusalem. When he comes back, all this running around that we have in the Matthew Gospel is there because there is a genuine threat. And the genuine threat is not because of who Jesus is religiously, but because of who Jesus might be politically. And it's designed to hold on to Herod's power. Hold on to his power in two ways, be clear. One, because the child might be a direct threat to Herod's life, because the child may want to take over the kingship. But also, from the standpoint of the Romans, they just don't want the turmoil in Judea during these days or in a leadership struggle. Which may be part of why Herod became so brutal, is that as his family was acting up, he needed to calm them down, and instead of telling them to take a pill or go to their room for time out, he chose to kill them instead. Herod is a dangerous man. And as one observer from that time wrote, it was safer to be a pig in Herod's house than it was to be one of his children, recognizing that the Jews wouldn't eat the pork, but he would kill his children. So very difficult political circumstances in which this child was born into, a lot of disruption in the nation, a lot of danger, but perhaps not for the religious reasons that we might have expected, but for pedestrian political reasons. Excuse me. So I hope you'll join us the next time when we will finish our study on Advent, talking about the messianic expectations of the Jewish people that led into the coming of Jesus. I hope you join us then. Thank you.